to improve an education system, you don't need to change the whole thing. You can just improve one piece, and then everything else, all the outcomes, dramatically improve that holistically. So I was wondering if Boris can elaborate on that. We can all implement that in our daily lives as well.
Great. So just, I guess, a bit of background. Educate, we're the largest youth employment and skills provider in East Africa. I got involved actually in university. I really wanted to play basketball, which is really big in the US, but I'm not very tall. So I did make the team, and I was looking for what was next in my life. And I internalized a quote that I would later hear, that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. And wanted to do something about that. And there was a classmate of mine who had kind of started this organization, and so I got involved and basically started at what is Educate in university. We do two things. One, we introduce an employment-focused school subject at secondary, high school, so like collège, lycée, across Uganda, Rwanda, Kenya, and Tanzania. And two, we build livelihoods boot camps for youth left out of school. So for the first 10 years, we really focused around helping make school really relevant to the workforce, so it can be a bridge and a pathway to employment. And we found that a lot of education reforms fail because you try to change the whole thing and you try to do too much. And that just by improving one subject that's really practical, that's really employment focused, you can have really outsized impact. So in Rwanda, where we've worked with the government to implement this nationally in their required national education system, we found that just by improving one employment-focused subject, we're able to double the university enrollment of the entire education system. 6 months after, we also found even a much bigger impact for women. We've been really applying this concept in schools, but also more recently out of schools. So across Africa, at least 50% of youth won't finish secondary school, high school, I think lycée, collège here. I believe the comparable stat in France is about 10%. And 95% of rural girls and young women won't complete school. And we actually kind of accidentally did this study in 2013, where we ran kind of our employment-focused subject was delivered in a 3-week boot camp, like a 3-week camp that you send your children away to kind of, so they don't bother you in the summer. And 3 years later, it had 30% income gains. And it's a pretty surprising outcome, and I think we were very surprised when we first saw it. But I think the way I've understood it is that I think that we believe that time equals learning and education. Time in school necessarily leads to results. And I think everything we've seen and we found is that that's not necessarily the case, that really high quality condensed educational experience can create outsized impact. And we're particularly interested in bringing that innovation now to out of school rural girls, 95% of whom don't finish school, majority of which have young children by the time they turn 20. And I think something here, I've been pushing Harry on this idea for a long time, that we generally accept that secondary, that if 4, 6, 7 years here is the best thing for everyone, but in an environment where it's very expensive, which it is in much of Africa, by only having secondary as the way to educate youth, then you get a very inequitable outcome. 50% of youth can't afford it. And so we believe there should be alternative pathways, and we believe condensed experiences can really be a breakthrough towards that. The analogy I use is that in the market for smartphones, the iPhone was the first phone. I imagine many of us have iPhones. I saw the Apple store across the street. But there's a lot of different smartphones all over the world. And so smartphone penetration is quite deep globally. But in the market for school, and particularly secondary school, high school, there's only really one product. And it was built 100 years ago. And I think increasingly, as we think about a future world with kind of rapidly changing labor markets, I think it's really important to think about alternative pathways. And I think condensed experiences can be transformational towards that.